Hello, Namaskar. Welcome to my pod, the CAA Show. CAA, as all of you know, is Conversations and Analysis, and my name is Juggi Bhasin. I'm not here to blame game. I'm not here to point fingers at the usual suspects. We all know who these usual suspects are. I'm talking about all these people from the liberal community whose mouths are shut, who have not spoken a word about the Kolkatta horror, about this young doctor who was raped and brutally murdered in a depraved manner. I'm not going to talk about these people particularly. I'm not going to take their names because that would be not in memory of this young doctor. That is pointless, it's worthless because we all really know who these people are. But rather, today in this podcast, I'm going to try and understand what is the reason why these people kept their mouths shut. What is the philosophy? What is the psychology? What is the reasoning behind all this? What makes all these so-called intelligent people, part of the intelligentsia, you would say, keep their mouths shut? And they are not only people from the political class, because a lot of people are being pointing fingers at political figures. No, not really. I would actually say that the blame, if the blame has to be given, it lies with practically every person part of this so-called liberal community, the academia, the intelligentsia, the media, all these people from Bollywood who keep speaking at the drop of the hat, the so-called poets of Bollywood who speak on just about every issue, sports people also. They have been going on and on about this silver medal or this gold medal which we never got, as if the person is entitled to get that medal, and making a ruckus about it, but all their mouths are shut about this Kolkata horror. And to me, that is the real horror, that how can there be what I call a conspiracy of silence amongst this entire liberal community on such a dastardly, such a depraved, such a dehumanized act which has happened in our country, which has happened in Kolkata. I'm going to talk about that, but I'm not going to name names because I don't like to do that. That is not what this podcast is all about. There are other podcasters who are taking names and all that. Let them do that. But I definitely do want to understand what these people are thinking. Where have they left their consciences? Where is their soul? Does not their soul revolt at the fact that such a dastardly crime against humanity has occurred, but nobody wants to talk about it? And I'll give you this instance. Yesterday, I think, or it was the day before, I again was listening to this bulletin on the BBC, the lead bulletin, the lead story at the 9:30, and it was done by an Indian reporter, and it was a longish story, and she was talking about the Kolkata rape case, the killing of this young lady doctor. And I think it was almost a 7 to 8 minute report. And would you believe it? The entire emphasis of the story was on the fact that women in India are being raped, they are under threat, and something has to be done about it. Noble words, it's a cause for concern, absolutely, all that is correct. But not a word in that report, in the lead story of the BBC, that this rape has occurred in Kolkata, that there is a government there at Kolkata which has to answer some questions. Not a word on that. This is what I call the conspiracy of the liberal world silence. This is the conspiracy which I am talking about, and this is what I want to talk about today. But again, practical things have to be kept in mind. I am feeling very emotional at the moment, but again, I would still take this occasion to urge all of you to please subscribe to my channel, the CAA Show. We bring you podcasts which hopefully make you think, which of course are entertaining, and you would enjoy them also. All you have to do is to press that red button on your screen to become a subscriber. Subscription is of course completely free, and we would of course appreciate if you would like the show. And if you like the video also, please share this video with your friends, your colleagues, and your peers. So thank you so much for listening to this particular message. Now I come back to the main story of the podcast today. For some reason, I am emotional today because, and it's not only it is something which has shook every one of us in India, but it goes to show that how callous probably we have become as a people, that we make politics out of it. We engage in what I call a conspiracy of silence about it. We point fingers at each other, but no one probably, and not many people I would say, have the empathy to understand what really has happened out there, what went on behind this entire thing, and more important, why is the entire ecosystem in this country and also the entire ecosystem abroad completely silent on this particular act? Why is that the case? And today I want to give you my philosophical reasons for that, because there is definitely a philosophy behind it. There is a hard-headed kind of a psychological reasoning behind it, why the liberal community selectively opens its mouth. It talks about certain horrors, it talks about certain crimes against humanity, but it does not talk about other crimes against humanity. Why is that the case? I'm going to talk about that in a little detail, so please bear with me. It's a philosophical argument which I'm advancing, so it's a little different. This podcast today is a little different from my usual podcast. It is not so much political in nature, but rather it is philosophical in nature, and maybe, hopefully, I can shed some light, give some insights on what really is going on out there. Let me start by saying that much of the thinking which joins the liberal community in India with the liberal community abroad, and in the present case, of course, much of this liberal community is now also the left. Some would call it the hard left or the extreme left or whatever, but it is left oriented. And there is a joining of issue out here. And as I said, not too many voices have come out to understand the depravity of this crime against humanity. And I trace it back to the reasoning that the Indian liberal takes its cues from the Western liberal. The Western liberal sets the agenda, it sets the debate, the contours of the debate, and the Indian liberal simply laps it up, embraces it without even understanding what it means for the India story. And what is that particular narrative which I'm talking about? In the West, as we all know, religion is on a decline. Not many people are going to churches. Not many people, a lot of the churches have been, you will find this amazing, but a lot of the churches have actually been converted to mosques. A lot of the churches are now used as places where youngsters gather, legally that is, for dance parties. I'm not joking about this. If you go to Ireland, you'll find many of those churches have been converted to that, because hardly anyone goes to church there. But that does not mean that the Christian concept of good and evil has gone out of the Western way of thinking or the Western ethic. They still believe in concepts of God, evil, Satan. All that is really, even today, a part of the DNA of the Western mind. And in that part of the mind, in that part of the Western mind, Satan to that extent, or the evil person to that extent, is of course the so-called right-wing government here in India right now, with the Prime Minister, of course, being elevated to this kind of a person. That is the Western thinking, and the same thinking, lock, stock and barrel, has been embraced by the Indian liberal. And as I have argued in an earlier podcast, whatever the Prime Minister in this country might do or not do, whatever he might say or not say, but the Indian liberal forever associates him with the 2002 Gujarat riots. It does not matter that Supreme Court has given a clean chit. It does not matter that all the investigative agencies, etc., have given a clean chit, that nothing, there was no interference from the political leadership in the state of Gujarat at that point in time. It does not matter, because the Western concept that you need an evil figure, you need an enemy, you need a satanic kind of person to justify the so-called good which comes, and the good here being the liberal good, or what the liberal community embraces. For that, an evil person is needed, and therefore this narrative of good and evil is firmly entrenched not only in the Western mind, but it has been embraced lock, stock and barrel by the Indian liberal, and that is the thinking out there. And when you have that kind of a thinking, what really happens? You have to understand that you lose the ability to differentiate or to sift, as I say, between what is happening on the ground, what is the real story on the ground, because then you look everything through the prism, that Western prism of everything is good and bad, of good and evil, you are with us or you are against us, of there is a godlike figure or there is a Satan-like figure. You only, that filtered vision is what you are seeing. You cannot with your own eyes see what is happening on the ground. And what is happening on the ground in Kolkata? Very simply, this is a crime against humanity. A young lady doctor was trapped, I would say, defenseless, against her will. In that situation, she was raped, brutalized, murdered, killed. That is all that happened. I am not interested in what ideology was she from, who did she follow, this party or that party. That is not important at all. This is all that happened, and therefore one should have roundly not only condemned that act, but it should have demanded answers, that what is that ecosystem that allowed this thing to happen. But those questions are not being asked, because it does not fit this entire thing into the ecosystem of the liberal community, because the thinking is that the political personalities at the top are also part of the so-called liberal community, and therefore fingers cannot be pointed. There are people in a certain sense. That is what is really going on, very, very unfortunately. And for my part, I'm not actually even blaming the political person, because politicians will behave the way they behave. We all know that. But it is us, for us, humanity. It is us, for us, the ordinary people on the ground. It is whether we are centrists or whether we are liberals or we are right-wing people or whoever we are, but we are all human beings. And we should have, or our responses to this entire gruesome act should have been humane. But that humanity is missing from the liberal community, completely missing, because of the political color. This political color that goes through the prism of liberalism, the Western liberalism and the Indian liberalism, which does not allow you to see the reality as it is, or the forces behind that reality does not allow you to see that. That is the real problem. And therefore, as I said, the Western ethic, the Western narrative, and I would recommend, if some of you want to go deeper into this philosophy, then read a book by Milton called Paradise Lost, and you will understand this central concept in that book, which is of course the philosophical construct of the Western mind, that for so-called good to succeed in this world, you need a devil, you need a Satan-like figure, because if there was no Satan, there was no evil person, there was no devil or something, goodness, the appreciation of goodness cannot take place. That's the central theme of Milton's Paradise Lost, and they actually practice that even today, and the same construct. And you would ask me, of course, and the question is legitimate, that why will the Indian liberal follow the Western liberal so blindly? And I'll give you the reason for that. And the reason for that is very simple, because the Indian liberal, by and large, people of my generation also, we've all grown up studying the English language, studying in, within quotes, English medium schools, going to, the girls go to convents, the boys used to go to these English medium schools. I remember my own school was run by Irish brothers. Sounds funny, but I probably did not even know the religious text of my own religion, but I certainly knew Our Father in Heaven, Holy Be Thy Name. That entire thing, even today I know it by heart. So our generation, and I would say not only my generation, but even the generation, the liberal generation which has come after that, even the current crop, they've all grown up on this kind of a thinking of the English language. Nothing wrong with the English language. I also speak in the English language. I also do my programs in the English language. I am a student of literature. I love the English language. That's not the point. But the short point I'm making is we lose sight of the fact there is something called an Indian culture, that we really are Indians at the end of the day. We are not Western people. And therefore, this entire construct has been adopted. And therefore, I remember in my generation at least, people used to, when we were growing up, we used to sneer. We used to look down upon people who could not speak proper English. We used to sneer at Bollywood, Hindi songs. Oh, we don't like Hindi songs, we like English pop. We have grown up with that. As I said, I could recite the Our Father in Heaven, Holy Be Thy Name by heart. It just came so quickly and natural to me. So this entire generation of us, the generations after that, the kids of that generation, today the liberals, the kids of that generation, they all even today follow the Western ethic. The ability to embrace the good points of Western civilization, and I'm not for a moment even suggesting that there's something wrong with the Western civilization. There are some really good, excellent points which we have to embrace, we should embrace. But in matters of civilization, etc., we have to respect our own civilization, where we come from, who are we as a people. But unfortunately, it has always been that we look down upon our civilization. That has been the construct so far. And therefore, this sense of conformity. And that is why I'm saying the Indian liberal conforms to the Western liberal. And in that conformity, as I said, and I gave you the example in the beginning, the BBC did not even talk about the city or the political parties involved in this entire issue. They did not mention that, and so did the Indian liberal. They don't even want to talk about it. It's that kind of conspiracy of silence which is going on both sides, and this conformity, this slavish conformity, I would say, is there. And then let's go a little more deeper and understand why this is happening. This is also happening because of another factor, what I called the guilt factor. See, the Western civilizational narrative not only runs on good and evil, but on God and Satan. And as I keep saying, you might not be going to church, you might not be a religious person, but still you are practicing that narrative. When the Americans say, the famous line of all the Americans, you're either with us or you're against us, it literally is about this good and bad thing, that we are the good guys, everybody else is the bad guys, so you have to be with the good guys. That construct is still there in the Western mind. It is part actually of their DNA. But I'm going to talk of another factor out here, and that factor is the factor of guilt. Guilt is a very, very important part of the Western consciousness. And guilt means that Satan did wrong, and Satan did wrong. Satan rebelled against God, and therefore he was expelled from heaven. And therefore this guilt has to be carried by the evil people of that betrayal to God. That's a religious argument. And then it comes down into the consciousness of the Western argument, that why has, for instance, wokeism, for instance, or why has, for instance, liberalism flourishes today? Because of this collective consciousness of guilt of the Western mind, that we oppressed in the colonies, the people out there, people like India, Africa, all these other places where the Western people went. We oppressed the black people, certainly, which is true also. I'm not saying that is not true. So the only way we can wipe out that guilt is that we go the other extra way, and we put these strictures, we put these conditions on the white people, and therefore the concept of wokeness came in, the concept of liberalism has come in, and therefore it carries that guilt factor. And therefore we, as I said, we are people, because what is the Indian liberal mind all about? We have to understand that. Why do we embrace, these are their problems, why do we embrace their consciousness? We do that because the Indian liberal mind is so quick to emulate the Western mind. It is always ready. And it's not only in political and religious matters. Look at it carefully. If you look at fashion, if you look at sexuality in terms of sexual choices, if you look at filmmaking, if you look at literature, if you look at lifestyle, if you look at travel, every possible thing, we are always emulating. We are trying to, we never want to project what we really are capable of, but we always want to emulate the Western mind. And therefore, in that particular sense, purely in that sense, we have also taken their concept of guilt upon us. And in the Indian context, where do you appropriate guilt? Who do you put it upon? No prizes for guessing. You, of course, put it on Prime Minister Modi and on the 2002 Gujarat riots. And therefore, as I said, whatever the Prime Minister might do or not do, or whatever he might say or not say, it doesn't make any difference. Because the liberal mind, for the liberal mind, now that is the guilt which he has to carry for the rest of his life. They will keep on pointing fingers at that. And that's why, as I said, in all these arguments and all this rhetoric, the 2002 Gujarat riots comes back again and again in the Indian liberal consciousness. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is a direct import from the Western way of thinking, the way they have embraced guilt as part of their consciousness, the wokeness guilt that the sins of the white man have to be washed away, and that can only be done by leapfrogging the browns and the blacks and the Islamists of the world into positions of power, and making to that extent the white man certainly powerless in the process. That is their guilt, and they impose this guilt upon us, that you have figures like the Prime Minister in this country who go back to the 2002 riots. So this, I'm giving you, ladies and gentlemen, a construct of where this thinking is coming from. Because, as I said, why it can't be possible that a human being suddenly has this empathy, this compassion, these feelings when something has terribly gone wrong for certain categories of people, and for certain other people you just want to keep your mouth shut. You don't want to open your mouth, as if your lips are sealed. They have been stitched. Why is that? And this is the reason why it is that. Because of this emulation, because of this copying. We literally photocopy the thinking of the West, the projection of the West, this entire ecosystem of the West. And I'll give you another very interesting example. Catch a lot of our politicians, catch a lot of our media people, catch a lot of our anchors, and they very merrily keep talking about, oh, this person is a very, very right-wing person. He's some kind of a Nazi person, as he's behaving like the Nazis used to behave in Second World War. Excuse me, a lot of people don't even understand. Nazism is purely a European phenomenon. It's not even an American phenomenon, and certainly not an Indian phenomenon. And therefore, when we keep equating right-wing or religious-minded people or whatever with Nazism, it's stupid, it's ridiculous. But that also shows that we just import thinking, philosophy, psychological arguments, lock, stock and barrel from the West. We don't even understand what Nazism is all about. Nazism actually is a kind of a thought process, an extremist thought process, but a thought process which actually was very European centric. The Indian conditions, how religious parties in India, how so-called right-wing parties in India, etc. have come up, is a totally different process. It has nothing to do with Nazism or Hitler or all these people. The only thing I think that all sides have adopted from Nazism, the practical thing they haven't wanted, is what Goebbels do, which keep on saying lies after lies till it appears like a truth. That's the only thing which all sides have adopted. So, in short, and coming to the end of this podcast, I just want to say that we do an injustice to these victims, to these people who have lost their lives. Our empathy becomes selective. Our sympathy becomes selective. Our heartstrings, they don't respond to these tragedies. the way they respond to certain other tragedies. And why? Because we have compromised our intellectual thinking. We have laid it hostage to the Western mind, to the Western ecosystem, to the Western values. Those are not our values. Our values are civilizational, our own values. They are different. And we have to understand that. We have to react to events on the ground as they are, not in technicolor, but in black and white, as to what is happening. This is simply a crime against humanity. It is a crime against humanity. Condemn it for it, find the solution to it, fix accountability. Who are the people, who are the ecosystems which are responsible for this? That is what we should be talking about. But unfortunately, only one half of the people talk about it. The other half, their lips are stitched in a conspiracy of silence. And so I think slightly on this emotional note, I come to the end of this particular podcast. I hope you like this podcast, and do subscribe to this show, and life continues on. And therefore I would still say cheers to everyone, and let's learn something from this. And if nothing else, we still carry empathy in our hearts for humanity as a whole. Thank you for watching, everyone.